Now, the question is a simple one. Again, it relates to this. If we are distinguished by our speech and reason, then when and how can you practice this? Where? Well, the question is, and you see how it comes to this very logically. If this is what makes us unique, then to be a human being means to have a companionship, to have people with whom you form a community. Your meaning, your potentials. Think of this notion. Now, I'm going to give you an example. I think we used this last time. And look how it translates into human community. Watch this. Remember we talked about acorn and an oak tree? An acorn is a seed. And, well, in order for a seed to become an oak tree, certain conditions have to be met. In order for this acorn to reach its potential and actualize its potentiality, you need to have the right amount of the sun. You need to have enough rain and water. You need to have nourishment from the ground. And you have to need someone to tend to this sometimes to make sure that this survives. So if these conditions are right, only then you can expect the acorn to reach its potential and become an oak tree. Now, how is it possible for man to fulfill its virtue, which is to say logic and reason and speech? How is it possible? Certainly it will not be in isolation. Certainly it will not be living an animal-like life. Certainly it will have to be something that is true, again, to human being, and that is to have a sense of a community, a city that is totally encompassing. Now he comes to this very logically again. Again, he loves to categorize. He says, look, if you think about it, initially you can be by yourself, right? No, let's make it a woman, so that would be different. This is a skirt. Now, the man or woman, the woman is prettier than the man. The woman in here by herself is in isolation, and it is totally outside of any human contact initially. But this individual soon forms a family in companionship with another. So family becomes the first social unit. Family becomes, and he says in family, again he's categorizing, he says in family you fulfill your basic needs, including procreation, companionship, very basic, rudimentary stuff. But this family, and you inevitably get a man and a woman together, you get a baby. And once you get a baby, you have a nucleus of a family here, and that's your family. But this is not enough. So what happens soon, you get a village that is comprised of many different families. So again, methodically, he says from individual to family, and now we got to the village. Village is for protection, because you figure that if you're isolated, a little house on the prairie, do you remember that? You're subject of various attack, and you have to be careful. Whereas if you live in a village and you have protection of others, so maybe you have a family here, so they can watch and safeguard the community, small community that you have. But he says that's a second form of community, but that's also rudimentary. Why? Because you fulfill like a little bit basic companionship. You're not quite commingled. Each one, family acts separately. They attend to different tasks, right? And they provide protection. It's rudimentary companionship. But he says, and look at his statement, he says, the third community, the third and the most important one, the most sufficient one, the noblest of all communities has to be the city. And he says the city has priority over the individual, the village, and the individual, the family and the village. Now, when he says he has priority, he doesn't mean it has priority in time. He means it is more important, it's prior, it is more noble, it is more worthy. Now, why does he say that? He says it is only within the confines of a city that we get our most important needs taken care of, and that is the virtue that he talks about of companionship and genuine fulfillment of moral worth, our moral worth. We reach our potentials within that community.
So you said the main, based on Aristotle, the main virtue for humans is reason and logic, right? So where would emotion be in the system?
You will have, no, he is not saying we don't have reason. We don't have emotion. If you look at it, I didn't draw it correctly, but think of it. Here is an object, a piece of rock. Here is a little vegetable or a tree. Here, let's say you have a cat. No, I can't draw to save my soul, but let's say you have a cat. And here you have a human being. Now, notice that as you go from inanimate object to vegetation, and from vegetation to animal, and from animal to human being, each one possesses a head of the chain, possesses all the qualities before. So emotion or passion or growth, all of those are entailed in human being, except what is it that distinguishes animals from vegetation? And even procreation sometimes happens in some form of plants. But technically this, the mobility of this, okay, and the emotions that come out. You may say, well, plants have emotions and stuff, but really there's a qualitative, not quantitative, there's a qualitative difference between these. For the same way that you can say speech and communication and reason in him. So he's not denying emotion, he's not denying growth, he's not denying appetite. He's only saying, well, here is what is the most distinguishing characteristic of human beings.
So how does he categorize emotion in compared to like Plato? Because Plato was focusing mostly on reason and logic and saying, emotion comes second.
Well, you'll see that he does not totally repudiate the views of the master. For Plato, it wasn't the case that appetite and the lower part of our body from stomach down and heart from here and then brain in here. So the hierarchy stays for Plato intact. Aristotle is not the one who denies this, actually the balance, and this is the very Greek in a sense. Greeks are obsessed and actually they're totally consumed with the notion of proportion. And look at their architecture, for example. Look at their motto: nothing to excess. Nothing to excess. In other words, you avoid harmony, principle, parallelism. These are, so Plato and Aristotle subscribe to this. The idea, and Aristotle actually takes it someplace else. He comes up with a theory of the mean. Mean not like your mother-in-law, mean like the median, She's passed away, my ex-mother-in-law has passed away, so I can joke about this. So the mean or moderation, and I'm going to talk about this, so that's where it belongs. I'll tell you in a second what it means. So he's well-balanced. The person is well-balanced. However, since, now look again, the logic, Aristotle's logic, since what distinguishes us from animals and makes us unique is our reason and speech, then it is the virtue of intellectual virtue that is the life of reason. The virtuous life of contemplation becomes the highest form of activity. In other words, not only you do right, but you contemplative. In other words, you know why you did what you did. See, that's why last time when I was giving an example, not only you do the right thing, but you have lived the life of contemplation with thought. You do the right thing, thinking and doing it, not just obedience, not just following. In other words, Dr. Milani can help the needy, and I can help the needy. No, I can go there, I have $5 in my pocket, and just throw it there, and I leave. He comes around, and he gives the same beggar $5. But as he's walking, he's thoughtful of this, well, what is the right thing to do? Shall I give him money? Or shall I make him work? Am I making a contribution to him? Should I do the right thing? What is the reason I'm giving this? So by the time he gets here, he's thought about this and he's come to the conclusion, helping the needy is a good cause. So he puts the $5. I did it too, but I did it nonchalant because I said, well, let him leave me alone so I can pass. But he did it